The chamber doors opened with a slow, metallic groan that echoed across the vaulted hall, a sound so out of place among the polished, humming technologies of the Galactic Council that several delegates flinched. They expected a team of human negotiators, maybe a desperate envoy carrying pleas for mercy, perhaps even the familiar stench of fear that young civilizations usually brought with them. Instead, they got one man, one human, walking in alone, unarmed, unguarded, not a single escort or drone behind him. Ambassador John Hale's boots hit the crystalline floor with steady, deliberate weight, each step landing like a countdown the council didn't realize had begun. His face carried no expression, his shoulders no tension. He simply existed in that chamber, as if he belonged there more than the beings who had occupied it for centuries. Telepathic murmurs rippled like static across the hall. The insectoid Zathri clicked in agitation. The bulbous, translucent Velm priests dimmed their bioluminescent skins. Even the stoic Eldrin archivists shifted uneasily, their tendrils curling inward in a gesture of instinctive caution. Something was wrong, very wrong. A solitary representative never arrived without fear. A species targeted for forced compliance never walked into the council with hands empty and confidence full. And no one refused to bow before the tri-spiral throne. Hale didn't bow. He didn't slow. He didn't even blink as he approached the center platform, the spotlight adjusting automatically to follow him. He reached the pedestal, stopped, and pulled a single sheet of paper from his coat. Not a date pad. Not a hollow sigil. A piece of white paper, printed with ink. Several delegates recoiled as if he'd drawn a weapon. Primitive technology unsettled them. It was unpredictable, unscannable, unlinked. It felt like a threat simply because it existed beyond their control. Hale set the paper on the pedestal. He didn't push it forward. He didn't dramatize the gesture. He simply placed it there, as casually as if handing a bartender a receipt. Then he stepped back and spoke, his voice unamplified yet carrying through the chamber with unnatural clarity. "Earth's official response to your demands," he said. "Negotiations rejected. Humanity does not yield." The words dropped into the neural-linked consciousness of every council member with the force of a detonated star core. The chamber lights flickered as telepathic fear spiked across hundreds of powerful minds simultaneously. Some delegates gasped. Others hissed. The neural stabilizers briefly overloaded, producing a sharp ringing in the air. Hale didn't react to any of it. His face remained calm, almost bored, as if he'd just announced the weather. For several seconds, no one moved. The silence wasn't peace, it was pure, unfiltered terror. The council had orchestrated a year-long campaign of economic strangulation, covert sabotage, PSYOP broadcasting, and engineered political fractures designed to bring Earth to its knees. By now, humans should have been crawling through space airlocks begging for relief. But instead of desperation, they sent this man, this quiet, cold-eyed relic of too many wars, to stare an empire in the face and refuse everything. The first to recover her voice was Councillor Valix of the Tri-Spiral Throne. Her translucent skin pulsed with red panic as she leaned forward. "Ambassador Hale," she began, projecting telepathic calm she did not feel. "Surely there is a misunderstanding. Humanity has suffered losses. Your trade routes are crippled. Your colonies—" Hale raised a hand. Not fast, not aggressively. Just raised it. And the entire room froze again. "Your sabotage attempts failed," he said. "Your engineered famines were neutralized. Your proxy rebellions collapsed before they began. And your fleets?" He allowed the faintest fraction of a smile to touch the edge of his mouth. "3 of them are currently drifting powerless between Kepler Gate and the Old Belt. Don't worry, they're alive. We're not the monsters you think we are." Shock hit the council like a tidal wave. A dozen species clutched at their neural tendrils, trying to understand how humanity, primitive, fractured, underestimated humanity, could have disabled entire fleets without firing a single shot. The Eldrin archivists quickly cross-checked internal data, only to confirm Hale's statement. The fleets were indeed offline. And no one knew why. Hale let the fear settle before continuing. "Humanity has entered preparation phase. You pushed us into a corner you assumed we'd die in. You assumed wrong. Humans don't die in corners. We dig tunnels, break through walls, build new doors, and walk right back out. A few counselors attempted telepathic intimidation, sending waves of pressure toward him. Hale didn't react. Their signals slid off him like fog against a mountain. He'd endured worse in his past life: psychic interrogations, battlefield mind probes, the crushing presence of dying star creatures whose final screams could fracture a human skull. A council chamber was nothing. He stepped forward again, folding his hands behind his back. You believe humans are emotional, impulsive, dangerous when cornered. And you're right. But you forgot one detail. He leaned slightly, not threateningly, just enough to make every being feel smaller. We learn. Fast. The Zathari hissed anxiously, clicking their mandibles. The Velm priests murmured prayers. The council's collective neural field trembled like an overstrained engine. Hale let the tension breathe, let their fear grow roots. Humanity rejects your treaties, he said quietly. Rejects your compromises. Rejects your manipulations disguised as diplomacy. You wanted conflict without consequences. You will not enjoy the consequences. Several species' fight or flight instincts fired simultaneously. The hall filled with spiked pheromones, psychic static, and ripples of panic through the neural lattice. Hale didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Humans had stopped begging. Humans had stopped bending. And the council finally realized that an unyielding human was far more terrifying than a desperate one. For the record, Hale added, turning away from them with deliberate calm, we still won't strike first. But if you force our hand? He paused at the threshold of the chamber doors, glancing over his shoulder. We rebuild from ashes. Can any of you say the same? He walked out as casually as he entered, leaving nothing in his wake but silence, dread, and the growing understanding that humanity was no longer prey, but something far more dangerous. Panic spread through the Galactic Council like a contagion, invisible but overwhelming, threading itself through every telepathic link and diplomatic channel across their sprawling empire. Hale had barely stepped off the central podium before a dozen encrypted side conversations erupted among the delegates, their voices urgent, clipped, vibrating with the sharp edge of dread. The neural stabilizers struggled to contain the overlapping fear responses, flickering between wavelengths as counselors tried, and failed, to regain composure. Humanity's rejection had not just surprised them. It had destabilized the foundation of the entire governing body. High Priest CHYR of the Velm floated backward, tendrils writhing. He spoke with certainty. CHYR murmured in a slow, oscillating tone. They could not have disabled 3 fleets. They do not possess the technology. They do, replied the Eldrin archivist, her translucent eyes dimming as hidden data streams scrolled behind her gaze. We've detected gravitational anomalies consistent with artificial lensing. They mimic stellar interference to mask infiltration. This is not primitive behavior. The insected Zathari ambassador slammed 2 claws into the floor, cracking the crystalline surface. Humans do not evolve this quickly, he hissed. Their development cycles are chaotic. Their politics unstable. Their biology unpredictable. They should be on their knees. Their assumptions shattered one by one, replaced by an old fear they had suppressed for centuries, the fear of a species that refused to break. Meanwhile, far from the council chamber, aboard the human flagship Resolute, John Hale stood before a panoramic viewport overlooking the nebulareed stars. He unbuttoned the collar of his diplomatic coat, exhaling a slow breath. The coat was symbolic, a relic of peace. But peace had been strangled long before Earth rejected the Council's demands. Peace had died the moment the Council believed humanity too young to matter. His aide, Lieutenant Mara Kestrel, approached with a data pad. Sir, the Council's neural emissions just spiked again. They're scrambling internally, arguments, accusations, demands. They don't know what hit them. That's the idea, Hale replied quietly. He didn't smile. Victory wasn't in rattling them. Victory was in forcing them to confront their own hypocrisy. Fear was simply the first step. Kestrel hesitated before speaking again. Do you think they'll retaliate? Hale ran a hand across his jaw, considering the patterns illuminated across the distant star map. They will. They can't afford not to. If they let this stand, every younger species will start asking why they've been kneeling to a council built on coercion. So what do we do? Hale turned from the stars. His eyes were steady, almost peaceful. We stay ahead. As always. Back in the council chamber, the chaos escalated. Delegates accused one another of failing in their assignments. The council's chancellor pounded his staff against the dais to reclaim order but achieved nothing. Telepathic static clouded the air as each species projected conflicting signals. Silence! The chancellor finally bellowed through full amplification. We must assess the threat rationally. But there was nothing rational about humanity anymore, not in the council's eyes. Humans had once been categorized as a temperamental mid-tier primate species with chaotic governance but high emotional intelligence. A nuisance, not a danger. Their war history was dismissed as self-inflicted, their innovations considered brute force approximations of refined galactic technology. But then came quantum ghosting, something the Council didn't even realize humans understood. Then came gravity lens interference, another technology humans weren't supposed to comprehend. Then came the silent disabling of entire fleets. One counselor whispered, "They learned from us." Another whispered, "They copied us." A third whispered what everyone feared, "They improved on us." The Chancellor's voice cracked under pressure. "We must send scouts to Earth, to evaluate their capabilities." "They'll expect that," the Eldrin archivist said sharply. "And based on our latest readings, they will intercept the scouts before they reach the moon." The Zathri ambassador's mandibles clicked anxiously. "Then we should strike now, before they finish preparations." A ripple of unease spread. The Council's doctrine forbade preemptive planetary strikes, officially. Unofficially, they had eliminated dozens of civilizations under the guise of intervention or containment. But Earth? Humanity? Something in the collective memory of every species hesitated. Humans had a reputation even before the Council interfered. They fought wars with themselves that dwarfed some interstellar conflicts. Their adaptability, resilience, emotional volatility, and frightening creativity gave them an edge that no species wanted to confront directly. The Veln High Priest whispered, "A cornered human fights like a predator. A united human civilization." The sentence trailed off. No one needed it finished. In a shadowed corner of the chamber, a young delegate named Erix, a slender, silver-skinned diplomat, observed quietly. He was new to the Council, untainted by centuries of arrogance. His voice broke through the noise. "Perhaps we should ask why they rejected negotiation before assuming hostility." The chamber erupted in scoffs, hisses, and psychic dismissal. The Chancellor slammed his staff again. "Humans have declared defiance. There is no ambiguity." Erix's eyes flickered. "But what if the ambiguity is ours?" No one listened. No one wanted to. Because the truth lurking beneath Hale's message was far more terrifying than the rejection itself. If humans didn't want war, they would have begged for peace. But they didn't. They refused negotiations entirely. Which meant, humans believed they could win. The chamber fell into a frightened hush as that realization spread like ink through water. Back aboard the Resolute, Hale received updates from Earth Command. Preparation phase was almost complete. Defense networks fortified. Shadow fleets positioned. Covert teams placed near Council hyperlanes. And more importantly, human scientists had unlocked the final calibration on microjump torpedoes, something the Council believed impossible due to instability. "Once they realize what we've built," Kestrel murmured, "they'll panic." "They're already panicking," Hale replied. "But they haven't reached the right kind yet." "What kind is that?" "The kind that makes them doubt their own power. The kind that would make the Galactic Council tremble long before the first shot was fired." The storm inside the Galactic Council did not quiet. It sharpened into something brittle and dangerous, a panic laced with desperation. Word of Hale's declaration had already rippled through every political bloc and military division. Entire fleets shifted formations without orders, commanders debated striking first, and intelligence bureaus scrambled to understand how humanity had outmaneuvered them on every front. The Council was breaking apart at its seams, and none of them realized that was exactly what humanity intended. In a secluded chamber beneath the main hall, the Council's Strategic Intelligence Corps convened. This was the real power circle, clandestine, ruthless, unbound by diplomatic niceties. They gathered around a holographic display of Earth star systems, threads of light marking trade routes, defensive networks, and suspected human research zones. Humanity's counter-sabotage routines have improved faster than any model predicted, said Director Murlac, a reptilian strategist whose species claimed superiority in warfare. His tail flicked nervously, an involuntary sign of agitation. Our viruses failed. Their colony stabilized. The political fractures we engineered healed almost instantly. This level of coordination is unnatural. A crystalline entity, shimmering like frozen mist, responded in a tone like chiming glass. We underestimated their adaptability yet again. Every attempt to weaken them has taught them something new. Murlac leaned forward. We need direct reconnaissance. We need to know how much they've evolved. Without data, we're blind. But they weren't blind. They were simply refusing to acknowledge what was already clear. Humanity was no longer reacting. Humanity was preparing. Above them, the council chamber resumed deliberations. Accusations flew like shrapnel. Telepathic pressure waves crashed against one another as delegates tried to dominate the conversation through sheer mental force. But for once, no species could impose order. Fear broke telepathic hierarchy. Fear equalized them all. We cannot allow a primitive species to defy us, shouted a bulky, crimson-skinned titan from the war-born Graal Imperium. If they reject talks, we force compliance. They have technology we do not understand, countered the Velm priest, glowing with anxiety. Perhaps they discovered something ancient, something dangerous. Or perhaps, Eric's murmured from his seat, we created the danger ourselves. His voice carried farther than expected, slicing through the disorder. The hall quieted, not out of respect, but because his words touched a forbidden truth. Eric's continued cautiously. We have exploited, manipulated, and obstructed them for years. Humanity simply responded. If we push further, they will escalate. The Chancellor snarled, an uncharacteristic break of composure. They already escalated. They rejected the Council's authority. They threatened us by disabling our fleets. Do not mistake insolence for diplomacy. Eric's met the Chancellor's gaze. I mistake nothing. I simply see what the rest of you refuse to. They were cornered. Now they are not. The chamber rejected his reasoning. Fear overpowered judgment. Meanwhile, aboard the Resolute, Hale monitored incoming reports. Tactical feeds projected holograms of shifting council fleets. He watched formations adjust, battle groups reposition, and scouts attempt stealth entries into human-controlled systems. Hale's crew intercepted each attempt before they even crossed the border. Kestrel approached him again. Council reconnaissance units neutralized. All without confrontation, per your directive. Hale nodded. Good. We avoid direct conflict until they force the issue. His hands clasped behind his back as he studied the hologram of the Council's home systems. Their movements were erratic, too many voices commanding at once. Perfect. He needed them off balance. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't its ships or technology. It was psychological warfare. Let them fear their own assumptions. Let them fear their collapsing unity. Let them fear humanity's silence more than its aggression. Kestrel hesitated. Sir, why hold back? We could strike their supply hubs right now. Cripple their command infrastructure before they mobilize. Hale didn't look away from the star map. Because striking first gives them justification. We need them to be the aggressors. Fear becomes terror when it turns inward. He tapped a point in space where 3 council fleets hovered. They're already doubting each other. Any pressure we apply now only deepens the fractures. Kestrel frowned. Feels like we're waiting for something. We are, Hale replied. We're waiting for them to realize the truth. They're not in control anymore. As if summoned by his words, the council chamber descended into deeper chaos. A message arrived, anomalies detected along their outer colonies. Systems darkened simultaneously. Communication severed. Panic surged anew. It's them! Screamed the Zathari ambassador. Humans are attacking our borders! But the Eldrin archivist analyzed the data in seconds. No. These are internal malfunctions. Power failures. Not attacks. The Chancellor slammed his staff again. Then why now? Why at this exact moment? Eric spoke softly. Because fear destabilizes systems, Chancellor. Your networks rely on mental harmony. And there is none. The realization sunk in slowly, painfully. Their fear was literally shutting down their infrastructure. Their minds were damaging their own empire. Humanity hadn't fired a shot. Humanity didn't need to. The Council was imploding through prediction alone, exactly as Hale calculated. Across the galaxy, the human shadow fleets repositioned in perfect silence, unseen, unreadable. Earth Command transmitted new intelligence models, refined predictions of Council behavior, near perfect in accuracy. Humanity had mapped their enemies' minds better than the Council mapped its own. Back on the Council floor, the Chancellor made one final attempt to restore order. We will not bow to human intimidation. We will prepare for immediate military response. Against what? Erix asked gently. A species that learns faster than you, adapts faster than you, and cornered you without a single offensive strike? Tell me, Chancellor, what do you intend to fight? The chamber fell into a suffocating silence. Because none of them knew the answer. Even worse. Hale did. And he was waiting for the Council to discover it the hard way. As the delegates descended into bitter arguments and frantic demands, Eric stared at the flickering lights overhead. For the first time since joining the Council, he felt something ancient ripple through him, a dread older than any empire, older than diplomacy. Humans did not reject negotiations because they wanted war. They rejected negotiations because they did not fear war. And a species that does not fear war is the most dangerous force in the universe. Hale's message had not been a threat. It had been a warning. One the Council was no longer capable of understanding. But soon would be. Very soon. The first sign that the Galactic Council had crossed the final threshold into collapse came quietly. Not with an explosion, not with a broadcast, but with a single, trembling whisper carried through the neural lattice. It was faint, almost lost in the background static of overlapping fears, but it struck every connected mind with an icy clarity that froze the chamber mid-argument. They're not preparing for war, the whisper said. They're prepared for what comes after. Every delegate paused, their tendrils, claws, membranes, and crystalline features tightening as the meaning settled into their thoughts like poison. If humanity wasn't preparing for the war itself, then they must have already accounted for victory. That possibility, once unthinkable, now felt terrifyingly plausible. The Chancellor rose, his voice shaking despite his attempt to mask it. This is psychological manipulation. Humans cannot defeat us. Their fleets are smaller, their colonies fewer, their biology fragile. They rely on emotion, not strategy. They disabled 3 of our fleets. The Eldrin archivist interrupted. And we still cannot determine how. They learned from our sabotage attempts, added High Priest HFY, glowing a deep, fearful violet. They used our own weapons against us. And they didn't even threaten us, whispered Erix, leaning forward. That is what terrifies you all, isn't it? They did not posture. They did not demand. They simply refused. Across the galaxy, every Council outpost felt the tremors of uncertainty. Fleets that were once symbols of dominance now hovered uneasily, unsure whether mobilizing would provoke humanity, or expose further weaknesses humanity already knew. For the first time, the Galactic Council found itself reacting, not dictating. Meanwhile, aboard the human flagship Resolute, Hale stood again at the viewport, his reflection blending into the swirling nebulae outside. Reports streamed in with surgical precision. The Council's unity was fracturing faster than predicted. Sabotage teams within alien factions blamed one another for human victories. Psychic stability networks were breaking under internal pressure. Entire star systems were entering lockdown out of fear of invisible human fleets. "Sir," Kestrel said as she approached, "the Council just issued a Level 1 internal security directive. They're mobilizing all member races for defensive positioning." "Good," Hale replied. "Panic forces honesty." Kestrel studied him for a moment. "Do you think they'll actually strike us now?" Hale's silence was answer enough. Back in the Council chamber, the Chancellor tried to seize control. "We must show strength. Deploy all remaining fleets to the Sol perimeter. Humans must understand that defiance will not be tolerated." Eric stepped forward, his silver skin dimming in warning. "And what happens when those fleets are disabled too? Or worse, what happens when they do nothing, and humans still gain ground? You are preparing for the wrong conflict," the Chancellor snapped. "And you presume to know the right one?" Eric's didn't flinch. "Yes. Because I am not blinded by history. Humans do not escalate without cause. They warn before they fight. And Hale warned us. Everything since then has been restraint." Restraint. The word chilled the hall. If humanity had truly shown restraint, then their capabilities were beyond anything the Council had accounted for. Murloc, the reptilian strategist, hissed in agitation. "Then what would you suggest, young one? Surrender? Capitulation to primates?" Eric's answered without hesitation. "Understanding." The Council erupted again, but this time the arguments were sharper, desperate. Some demanded preemptive annihilation strikes. Others screamed that such action would doom them all. In the back of the chamber, a few species began drafting escape strategies, hiding worlds, contingency colonization routes, neural shutdown protocols, behaviors seen only in civilizations facing extinction. And humanity had not fired a shot. Eric's watched them unravel. These beings who once ruled the galaxy with absolute authority were now reduced to frightened children tossing blame like debris in a storm. "You brought this on yourselves," he muttered, though no one heard him. Above the chaos, a communication alert blared through the chamber. The hologram flickered to life, projecting the image of a dark, star-filled void. A Council scout ship, trembling from atmospheric instability, appeared on screen. "This is Recon Vessel Tylon 47, the pilot said, voice cracking. "We've encountered something at the edge of Sol space." The hall went silent. "Proceed," the Chancellor demanded. The pilot swallowed. "We detected shadows. Hundreds. Maybe thousands. Moving in formation. But nothing shows on sensors. No heat signatures. No drive emissions. It's like looking into a black ocean with currents we cannot map." Hale's shadow fleets. "Then," the pilot whispered, "they disappeared. Completely. Sensors read empty space. But we know they were there. It feels like they were watching us." The Council chamber collapsed into pandemonium. Delegates shrieked, convulsed, or overloaded their telepathic circuits. The Chancellor shouted for calm but achieved none. Fear became hysteria. Hysteria became paralysis. And then Hale appeared. Not physically, his message. A small holographic projection materialized on the central dais. Hale stood with hands clasped behind him, posture relaxed, voice steady. "You have begun mobilizing fleets," he said. "I expected that. What I did not expect was how quickly you would unravel under your own fear." His gaze scanned the hall, and delegates flinched though he could not see them. "Humanity does not seek war. But we do not run from it. You mistake caution for weakness and silence for concession. Understand this, we do not fear you. We fear what happens if we allow you to continue." Some counselors trembled visibly. Hale continued, "Your power is built on coercion. Your unity on fear. Humanity rejects both. We offered you a warning. You chose escalation. His expression hardened a fraction. So now we wait. You will fire the first shot, not because we force your hand, but because fear will. And when you do, we will finish what you began. The hologram dissolved. Eric's closed his eyes in dread. Hale was right. The Council would attack. Not out of confidence, out of terror. Somewhere beyond the chamber, engines roared as fleets activated warp cores. Somewhere aboard the Resolute, Hale watched the same movements unfold. And across the galaxy, both sides understood the truth. The Galactic Council had not been defeated by humans. They had been defeated by the fear of what humans could become. As the first Council fleet surged forward, a final thought rippled through the lattice. War had not begun. War had simply been inevitable. And humanity was already prepared. CTR prompt. If you enjoyed humanity standing strong against impossible odds, join the human side. Subscribe now and never miss the next HFY battle for our survival.